What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Mulkin, joined by Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you this morning? We had a full weekend.
Yeah, man, it was a long weekend, an exhausting weekend, to say the least. I pretty much crashed on Sunday. Had a couple of chores around the house, but man, just for the most part, crashed out. 2 long, late nights on over the weekend.
Yes, it was a fun weekend. And fans, the only place where you can keep up with all of the shenanigans and all the travels, you got to go to patreon.com/tapped-out-pod. You can get all the behind the scenes stuff. You get this show and the national show early. Uh, yeah. And also, you got to go to YouTube. You can also become a member at YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe, hit the like button, and hit that bell and get those notifications. Audio people, we haven't forgotten about you. You can listen to our content wherever you listen to podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and all the rest. That's how you can keep up with everything that's happening. So, a little bit different this week. We mentioned last week we're changing the format a little bit. And so you and I will be covering this past weekend shows, and then you and Myron will be covering the upcoming shows for this weekend.
Yeah, it's a new, just to mix it up a little bit, give us some more time. And I actually kind of like the concept. I know a lot of people were probably in a panic yesterday, wanting to know where we were. I think we're also going to bump it back. We've had a conversation about bumping back recording to Tuesday. The logic is it gives people that the indie shows that run on Sundays more time to get their stuff into us, and it kind of gives us just more time in general to recoup everything. And then that pushing those promotion parts over to the national show, I gotta even contemplate, is that even what it's going to be called anymore at that point, but it gives me and you more depth time to dive into some things, get those, because there are weeks we just do nothing but rattle off everything that happened and then everything that's coming. No hot hand, no power five, no deep dive, no talk about the champions, none of that stuff. We had all these things we wanted to talk about, we're just not getting to. And then it kind of bumps out. So the question became, and this is a little probably more, and I want feedback, tappedoutpod@gmail.com, is the show's actually maybe dropping back-to-back days at this point. Like we may be literally Wednesday, Thursday, like back-to-back. I'd love that feedback and see what people think, because I want to make sure our Patreon and our YouTube members have the value of when we're done recording, they get this show early. Is 8 hours early enough, or is it the next day? Because if I put it up by noon, do I release this show at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night?
Right.
That may be an option. tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Share those thoughts. That's kind of what we want to get into. And then the other thing we actually talked about, because one of the things we wanted to get into is, AEW is such a long window, and I know you like AEW. You're a big fan. You watch it, and it's before we got into the indie stuff. I did real quick want to ask you that, just real quick. Hot topic of the weekend: Mercedes Mone. Is she an unequivocal bust at this point?
So I have never been a very big Mercedes Mone fan. Even when she was in WWE, I always felt like she was having great matches because she was put in with great people, whether it was Bayley or Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch or others. She was working with great people. I think she has definitely been exposed. I think we're certainly seeing how WWE can polish people and give them parameters in which they can succeed. Although on the flip side, we're seeing Jade Cargill in the WWE system still have some. She's still got unlimited potential, but yeah, Mercedes Mone, please take the mic away from her. Please.
Is she an example? Let me ask you this, because we obviously are fans of both products. Is she a product of, there was a time where everybody just railed on scripted promos.
Yes.
Did she benefit? Because she clearly now has reportedly been giving creative control. She has a writer who is just kind of there for her. But when she's given a mic, it's clearly like she's going out there and she's all over the place, and it's just not connecting at all. And did the WWE writers channel her and say, like, this is what you're going to say and this is how you're going to get there, and did they make her? That's the crazy thing. By the way, I had a conversation with a wrestler this weekend. Somebody was talking about how great another wrestler was, and they were like, their best match was with, they could go back and look at their best matches. It's with this person, this person, this person. And you're like, oh, wow. Like, you're right. It's 1,000%. Like, I'm not saying that person's not good, but when you talk about they're great, sometimes it helps to have a heck of a dance partner. And Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, etc., probably not some bad ones to be in there with.
Right. And you also had her having matches with people that, if I'm not mistaken, she was at the Performance Center with. They were friends. They knew each other for a long time. And now you've kind of thrown her in there with people she's not as familiar with. Is it the packaging? Is it, there's so many things it could be. It's certain that they're building up to an eventual Camille and Mercedes split. But I certainly don't think. I think they thought having Camille with her would give Camille a rub, and I do not think that has been the case.
Is she more of an anchor than a plus? That's a scary thing, and I hate that for Camille because I'm a huge fan of hers as well. So
if Camille needs a mouthpiece, that's one thing, but it certainly doesn't need to be Mercedes Mone.
No. And I guess before we dive into that, the question I was going to say is she the biggest bust in history? If she is getting paid $5 million, if she's given creative control, if you brought in somebody specifically kind of to help write just for her, like to this point, she is literally just wah, wah, wah in this run so far.
Is she really making $5 million a year?
That's the rumor. That was the rumor that went out there. Whether that's accurate or true, I don't know. But can you just imagine if that's true? Like, Tony Khan just felt like that's what it was going to take to get her. And by the way, I'm all for, by the way, every talent making every penny they can get.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's a good restraint to see WWE basically, from what I heard, put a contract and like, look, this is what you're worth to us. And by the way, I think talents need to get used to that in general. That's where they're going to be. This is what we see your value at. Vince would overpay potentially. They're not going to. They're going to say, this is what you're worth, and this is what we're going to give you. And if you can go make $5 million with Tony Khan, go do it. Awesome. And she did.
I would say for WWE, you can probably count on two hands the talents that they're worried about going to not worried about going to AEW. There's about 10, I'd say there's 10 talents that are indispensable to WWE, if that. And then the rest of them, they're like, yeah, if you go there, I mean, you'll have a little more creative freedom. You might make a little more money, but they're not the worldwide leader in sports entertainment.
Correct. So anyway, let's dive right into the other stuff, man, because that's what everybody's here for. Here, me and you talk about, I'm sure.
That's right. Let's jump right into the Indy Rewind. Holy cow. It was a crazy weekend. Let's start off first with Phoenix Wrestling Experience there at Savannah River Brewing Company in Augusta. They had a big announcement Sunday night or Thursday night, and it was the launch of the Phoenix Wrestling Dojo. We had talked about this when I interviewed James Hunter several months ago. This was something that was already in the works. It is now officially launching. people can start contacting and getting getting information there. I am aware of who at least one of the trainers is, but I don't. That's not my story to break at this point. But it would be certainly one of the best trainers in Georgia. One question I want to ask you about Phoenix Wrestling is they've announced a partnership with Wrestle America, and I did a little Google mapping. Augusta and Forsyth are about 2.5 hours away. What do you think the benefits of this partnership could be of a little cross promotional stuff? Because they're certainly not going to feed off of like they're not going to take each other's crowds away. So, what are some benefits you might see from a partnership like this?
I guess that look. I think for Phoenix, there's a brand loyalty to Wrestle America. Like they've been around for a while. They've got a reputation. They're solid. So I think at least you can kind of attach. If somebody's it's the old vouching for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's it for Phoenix. Wrestle America, I don't know. I mean, like I what's the trade off there? Is there financial? Is it? I mean, like, I always chuckled, and this is not a conversation. This is a kind of a tangent here. When it's like a talent share, we've seen that before, and I'm like, dude, you don't have any talents. You don't have any exclusive talents.
Right.
So there is no such thing as a talent share. So I think for now, but look, there could be somebody. Look, the powers that be at Wrestle America also understand like just the health of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a big thing that we're experiencing now on the national scene. When you hear Paul Levesque talking about it's the WWE's obligation. We want to talk about times are changing. It's their obligation to help the sport of pro wrestling be healthy for the long term. It's not just to worry about themselves. They got to make sure everybody's, and maybe that's kind of what Wrestle America sees as well, helping these guys out. Because there's, I always tell people you never know when you're going to need a hand. So maybe that's the trade-off from the other side.
I do feel like there's certainly some guys working for Phoenix that I haven't seen at other places in Georgia. I think of Aaron Berry off the top of my head, and maybe this opens a door for somebody like Aaron Berry to get an opportunity to Wrestle America. Maybe you see somebody like a Dominic Stuckey or a Fry Daddy come over to Phoenix Wrestling Experience. I think that it opens up some possibilities, and we'll talk a little bit more about partnerships and other things later on in the show. But Phoenix Wrestling continues to do well, and they've got a lot more shows planned, and not just hitting Augusta, but they're doing kind of the brewery tour. So Friday night, SEA had one of their big shows, Ultraviolet Radiation. 104 in attendance, one of the biggest crowds they've had there at the Royston Dome. Tower retained the SCA title. Scott Mason retained his Power Square. Chop Top became the new Friday night champion. And they announced September 6th they're going to celebrate their 1-year anniversary with Heath Slater, who's been making the rounds here in Georgia recently.
Yeah, man. And Justin Sane picked up a win. I saw that as well. Look, SCA just kind of continued. Look, if they're coming up on a year that they've been doing their thing week after week after week, kudos that they're still here. Because let's be honest with you. Look, there were people that was like, oh, it won't happen, it won't last, and they're still here. So I think you have to give them credit where credit is due. They're still here. And by the way, like you said, to have one of their big crowds up to this point doing that. So kudos to those guys.
They have, no one else to my knowledge has run as many shows over the last 52 weeks as them. And they have definitely, they've definitely proven themselves to be stable. And I think they're going to be around for the long haul, and they're giving guys a place to perform that may not get an opportunity elsewhere. So kudos to them. We went down to Canton, Georgia, Southern Honor Wrestling. This was by far of the couple of Southern Honor shows I've been to, by far one of the biggest crowds. I heard several say biggest crowd other than the 1,000-person show. The question is, I think we were critical of Southern Honor, not critical, but just said, hey, they've been gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not here, we can't talk about you. But are they back now after one show?
That was funny. We talked about a new segment on the show where it's the overreaction Monday. It's one of my big Sports Center guy, ESPN guy, and that's kind of one of their things. And I was like, literally, as we were sitting there, we're hearing like 609 or something like that, or whatever the number was. And I'm sitting there going, "They're back, baby! They're the the king of the mountain," blah blah blah. And and that's kind of where we are though, right? Like we got to react to what happened this past weekend. What have you done for me lately, baby? That's kind of what we do. But look, Gary knows. I mean, I was like, that was an awesome crowd. It's a phenomenal show. We'll get into what we think of the show in a minute. But then there's next month. Like, there's always like, then what? Right? Then what? Then what? The Rumblejack, let me ask you this. Because I always make the same case for WWE. Everybody loves WrestleMania. It's the granddaddy of them all. It's the big blah, 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 blah. My favorite pay-per-view is the Royal Rumble every year. Is it potentially becoming that's the case, for a lot of the fans there at Southern Honor? The Rumblejack's becoming the event.
Yes. One thing I would like to see, one of the things that makes the Royal Rumble so special is, and now they've even changed this language the last couple of years, is if you win the Royal Rumble, you main event WrestleMania. You're going to get this title shot. Gary made it. Gary had an interesting promo. He said, whoever wins Rumblejack can challenge for any title, but everybody goes for the big dog. And I thought that was interesting. I would go ahead. Your match is not the same as the Royal Rumble, similar, but it's different. I would say, hey, whoever wins Rumblejack, you're going to main event the anniversary show, which I think is still here.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to main event for the title. To me, that gives you a little bit more. I mean, it's already got big stakes, but that would make it even more. And then as a consumer, as a paying customer, if I know, oh man, now it's going to be this guy versus this guy on this date, boom, putting that on my calendar. That's just me, though.
And you even got the show in between for the face-off or the confrontation, whatever you're going to do with them to hype that for one more month. That's what you're getting, and that's what we're getting. I mean, the poster. Let's jump right into it. The poster for the next show in September is your Rumblejack winner. It's literally like think about this. Most Southern Honor posters are just a collage of the talents that are there. This is Carly Bravo punching out. Carly Bravo obviously is your winner of the Rumblejack. It's funny that it surprised me, and I even said after the show it surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
Not because Carly Bravo won, is just because I felt like the direction obviously was heading somewhere else. So Carly Bravo to come out of nowhere, kudos, and I've been banging that drum for, if I feel like 2 or 3 years at this point now, that I was like, dude was a star when we first saw him, and he just oozed his charisma all over the place. And obviously there's a reason TV likes him, right?
Yeah. Yes. It'll be interesting to see where they go with this. I think Carly Bravo called everybody off guard. Most of us were surprised that he was even in the match. So for him to win the thing was, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm still a little in shock. That was not on my bingo card. Now, you had Judias, who retained against Gunnar Miller in a last man standing match that was brutal, that got very close to us. Can I say something quickly about fan etiquette? and you push back on me if you want to. If the wrestlers go into the crowd and you are a fan, you are 100% allowed to leave your seat and follow them and go wherever they go. 100%. However, if there are people, if that takes you to an area where people are sitting, you cannot, or you should not, in my opinion, dislodge those people from where they've been watching the show the entire show. That's just my personal take. I felt like me, you, and Myron, we'd kind of had our spot. When that happened, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I guess I was fine moving for the wrestlers, but when some fans came over there, I was like, okay, whatever. That's just me. Maybe I'm just
Well,
oriented that way.
let me back up. I think I'm going to take our situation out.
Yeah, I got you.
For other reasons. But the other fans that were sitting there already, yes, I agree with. Me personally, doesn't bother me, whatever.
Right, I got you.
But for those other fans that were paid and they were sitting in those seats the entire, and then everybody runs in front of them, I have a general rule about that, but that's a whole other conversation for another day.
Well, I think for me, it was a guy that was a pretty tall guy, and he just literally stood right in front of me in my chair, and I was like, okay, all right, I guess we're doing this or whatever. Anyway, I'm sorry being a little baby today. Anyway, what a brutal ending to that match. But let me tell you, Judias and Carly Bravo, have they ever faced off? Sign me up.
Yeah. I'm down. I'm all in. No pun intended.
The other match, some controversy. Not really sure what the full story is. Kyle Matthews defeated Hunter James for the Jake the Snake Legacy title, won by submission. I said to you, I thought his feet were in the ropes, Hunter James. When Hunter James came out for the Rumblejack, Tristan Michaels came on the screen and said the decision had been reversed. I couldn't exactly hear why it had been reversed, but it was reversed. And so Hunter James is still the Jake the Snake Legacy title, Legacy champion. Your thoughts? Did you catch something that I didn't catch?
Are we stunned that there's controversy that involves Hunter James and Tristan Michaels? Not really. By hook or by crook, he was going to hold on to that title one way or another. Now, and then the hard pill to swallow is you are correct. Unfortunately, his foot was. However, you could make a case for referee's decision is final, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't go that route, so be it. But I got a feeling we're far from over because those two had a huge interaction in the Rumblejack itself as well. So I don't think we're done. Kyle's got a good case now that he's actually beat him. I think so. I think we're going to clearly see a rematch of some kind.
Now, I know how you feel about Hunter James, but I do want to say this. Kyle Matthews, the Technical Wrestler of the Year award, is literally named after him. Anytime there's a list of technical wrestlers or best technical wrestlers in Georgia, he's unquestionably in the conversation. I'm personally thankful. Right when I was getting into independent wrestling, Kyle Matthews had retired. That's always what was supposed to be his last match at SCI several years ago. So for him to be back and for me to be able to see him perform, I'm pretty excited about that. Having said that, Hunter James hung with him hold for hold in that match. I was utterly impressed by Hunter James.
I agree. And there was a part 2 to the Hunter James conversation that we'll get into later. Hunter James proved a lot this weekend. Still doesn't mean you got to like him, but it's still, but as far as a wrestler goes, yes, you have to give him credit where credit is due.
Yes. Southern Honor will be back there in Canton at the Action Building on Friday, September 6th. So check that out. No matches announced yet, but it will be interesting as they head to
before you move on.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, because this is something we questioned, as we walked out. When Rumblejack was 30 men, that's difficult enough to pull off. Then you go to 40. Turns out it was probably 46, 47. Who knows?
Yeah.
And if you know why it was an odd number, you know why. It's fine. I genuinely am asking this question, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Does anybody book that type of match better than Dylan, on the independent scene, anywhere for that matter? I'm not even asking about Georgia. I'm just curious because it's story. Part A's at this part, did it like, look, we got to see the return of Logan Creed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Has the face off with Big Ben Bishop. By the way, yeah, I'll save that later. Yeah, because he made an appearance this weekend that I saw, and wow, that's all I'm gonna say. But what kind of trust and what do people put in this guy that he's with Logan Creed coming out? He eliminates Logan Creed. Big Ben Bishop eliminated Logan Creed from the Rumblejack, only to have to face off with Cruel later in the night. But again, you can see what I'm talking about, the story piece there. That's as these little stories play out throughout the night. I'm sitting there in my head going, like, does anybody do this any better than Dylan?
He set up some really great moments, and you have to book those moments in a way where there's certain moments you can't do if there's 13 guys in the ring.
Correct.
Not to kind of peel back the curtain, but Dylan had his NFL playbook spreadsheet. And Dylan, if you're listening to this, send me a picture of that. Would love to just see. That's a great Patreon right there. To sit down with him. Anyway, yeah, that'd be, yeah, I would like that. I think you're right though. It was very entertaining. Yeah, it was a very entertaining night, very entertaining match. I didn't mind getting back at home at 2:30 in the morning. It was fine. Saturday night, you were down at Tannery Row Ale House for the latest Disruptor show, a full night. One of the matches that I had circled that I really want to see was Hunter James and Zicky Dice. What were your thoughts on this intriguing matchup?
That's the second part of the Hunter James conversation. So he hangs with Kyle Matthews one night, and then on the next night he goes out there and he hangs with Zicky Dice. It was a tall task. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Zicky Dice is a pro. They go out there and they did a great job. It's amazing to see. And by the way, we hate Hunter James one night. We love Hunter James the next night.
Right. Right.
Brought his puppy to the ring.
Oh my!
So that was a little bit different. But yeah, Hunter James is, like I said, you're right. And what I do like about him being a Disruptor, we're seeing him wrestle some different people.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what we've always put down the gauntlet and thrown it at him and said, we got to see you wrestle more than the people you're comfortable with. And I think Zicky Dice, pushed him on, pushed his limits a little bit, and we got to see it. And I think that's what we need more of from Hunter James. 1,000%. Yeah,
that's one. That's one that I hate I missed. A couple of other matches, you had a new party animal champion in the aforementioned Ben Bishop walking away with that title.
So his first defense since capturing that one, he's got out there. Look, by the way, Matt Sexcells, Dave Stage, Big Ben, all knowing their roles in this match. I mean, I saved something for the air that I didn't want to tell you until I wanted to see your instant reaction.
Okay.
During this match, there's a running joke of the Party Animal Championship just killed the business in one match. And I was there for it. I thought it was hysterical.
Mm-hmm.
During the match, Matt had a beer, and he was like, it wasn't cold.
Oh.
Sub-Zero comes out from the bag and literally sprayed the beer can to make it cold so they could drink the beer. Yeah. So, I mean, look, it's the Party Animal Championship is everything you can probably imagine that it is. And, that's why it works for guys like CB Suave that were in there. Matt Sells is in there. Dave Stage is doing a great job, fitting in that mold. But right now, is anybody like on social media, on the indies, that there's Big Ben Bishop has all the traction in the world. And, with his name has gotten out there, look, Jeff Jarrett's pushing him. But just to see in general, to embrace, I don't know that anybody embraces social media any better than him.
Right.
And I think that's why he fits that role for sure. So
certainly Southern Honor booked him very well, and I think that was his debut with Southern Honor. Maybe not. They booked him very well, and if they haven't locked him up for the rest of the year, they're out of their minds. We're both big fans of Big Ben Bishop, and I'm curious to see what he posts on social media about that championship. That would be very interesting. Disruptor also introduced a new title, the Valhalla Championship, won by Luke Sampson, who is another man that is just not a small dude at all.
Is he a belt collector at this point? That's his third that I know of. I may actually have. No, I don't think he's the tag champion. But anyway, he's 3. I know he has 3 singles that I know of off the top of my head. So, kudos for him, man. Look, it's a cool concept. I cannot wait. I've literally had a private conversation that I'll tell you off air about some ideas that I threw post-show of I think he's some guys who could wrestle for that title. And that would be interesting with big Luke Sampson for sure. But look, there were Curtis Coleman, and let me ask you this, because we hadn't had a huge conversation about it since he came back at the last show. This guy thought his career was done.
Mm-hmm.
And he's back, and he's back with a vengeance. I mean, he wrestles Rico for the Eastern Seaboard title. I'm sorry, he wrestled Vari for the Disruptor Championship. But he got involved earlier in the night as Rico and Slim J had a match for the Eastern Seaboard title. So he's just all in the mix of everybody. And Curtis Coleman is right back to where he left off as just one bad, mean, angry dude.
And he has come back, and it's very clear he is seeing this as a new lease on life, and he's not messing around with opening match guys. He's inserted himself into 2 title pictures, the Eastern Seaboard's title and that Disruptor Championship. He did lose to Vari Morales, and then took his frustrations out on, and then got into it with Slim J. So who knows? Nothing is settled right now at Disruptor. Speaking of which, we talked about this feud in Disruptor that's really been going on since their return show earlier this year, and that's Tim Miller and Randy Whitworth. Miller got the win in this lumberjack match. I mean, this is by far maybe the longest feud of the year so far.
They make that case, yeah.
They've had more matches than, there's been something with them on every single Disruptor show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the initial one, they were in a 6-man in the initial show, and it's just kind of every single show been the progression. Really cool that they blew it off this way. From my understanding, I think they're done at this point. Tim Miller picks up the win, and look, I'm curious to see what's next for him in that building, because that crowd absolutely loves him there. Homegrown talent, they absolutely love him. So I'm curious to see where that goes, progression down the road. By the way, not the only thing. The Disruptor Cup, this was probably my argument. This was probably my match of the night, potentially. For really, how can I put this? The Exotic Youth is clearly the veterans in this ring. Mm-hmm. But the Superstars, Slime Season, and Better Together, 2 very young teams, or they're all young teams there.
Right.
I was impressed at the match that these guys pulled off. Literally, it was a tornado match. So 4 guys in there at all point, 8 guys in the ring. Referee. It's those are difficult to pull off. I had a veteran tell me that at that show, People don't realize how hard that is to pull off, and they did a phenomenal job from top to bottom pulling it off. And I was a little surprised, not because of the talent, but Slime Season picking up the win. Exotic Youth had to be your odds-on favorites going in, and then that did not pan out that way. And Slime Season is your Disruptor Cup champions, which is kind of just that's good for those kids.
So what I really like that, instead of the tag team titles, they're doing this cup thing. I think that's pretty innovative. And again, Slime Season, we've seen them a couple of times. Very, very impressed with them. Again, nothing is settled right now at Disruptor. A lot of things happening. They're going to be back Friday night, September 20th, right there at the Tannery Row Ale House. So
and I got an invitation. I got an invitation from somebody that I wanted to throw out to you as well.
Okay.
CB Suave, gets a last second opponent. He was supposed to have somebody else. Goes out there and delivers another stellar match like always. Why is he not booked more places? I'm curious. I mean, nobody's on the entertainment factor. He's right there. And if you don't believe me, he only wrestles on like the biggest show, in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he wears a mask. We'll leave it at what it is, but he's still, but he invited us down to Dragon Con. Oh. He's going to be at Dragon Con. So I didn't have that on my calendar yet. So I wanted to throw that out there. When I saw the name, I was like, oh yeah, we might have to put that on our calendars and see.
Is that Labor Day weekend?
It's
okay.
But I think the wrestling show's like the Thursday before, or something like that.
We'll have to, we can talk about that. I'm not sure where I might be at parts unknown that time. Make sure you check Disruptor out on Facebook as they begin announcing matches for that September 20th show. In Augusta, Warren Road Community Center, Saturday night, Viral Pro Wrestling, their biggest attendance ever. Over 600. If I have seen the pictures, that place was packed. They did have, what do you want to call it, some help. They did have a meet and greet and a match with Joe Henry, who is one of the hottest acts in the country right now. And I was not aware of this. This was Joe Henry's first indie date since he's been working with TNA and NXT.
What a coup. I mean, I hate to, somebody was like, oh, they drew 600 with Joe. They drew 600 plus.
Yes.
By the way, I wanted to clarify largest attendance and gate.
Yeah.
Because we're big fans of that gate number as much as we are attendance. So kudos to them for, absolutely just knocking a home run. And if it's Joe Hendry draws the house, okay, so be it. But here's what you do. Let Joe Hendry draw the house, but then go out there and capitalize on the fact that there's 600 plus people in the building.
Correct. We asked this about Southern Honor. Viral, I have constantly said of the promotions that stayed in business post-COVID, Viral was the one hurt the most because they had so much momentum before COVID.
Yeah.
So the question is Viral back? Because it feels like, as we talk about the card, we talk about some of the things, this felt like a reset to me. You had the aforementioned Joe Henry and Billy Brash. They went to a time limit draw, and then there was some interference. You had lots of debuts for Viral. AJ Kazana defeated Tyson Maddox. Lodi defeated TJ Boss. John Schuyler defeated Chad Skywalker. John Davis defended the heavyweight title successfully against Nick Halen. Buff and Fluff retained tag team titles. They crowned a new women's champion in Eric Academia. Drew Hood retained Outbreak. But really, their main story over the last year was the front office, was Josh Hancock, all these heels. They controlled the titles. That angle appears to be over as Owen Knight quit the front office. They jumped Hancock. This feels like a complete reset for Viral. A new roster, new season. So I think the question is, what do you do with that? You just had a large crowd. You had good angles. You had good storylines. what could be next for what could be next for Viral? Are they going to? Is it now going to be Hancock and Lodi? You know, Lodi kind of came in as a whatever silent secret partner or whatever. Do they now team up against the heels? Is there still even a heel faction in here?
Let me ask you this. I know. I think I know my answer, so I'm going to ask you first. Is the heel GM owner like has that run its course in wrestling in general?
I
I'm
in
glad they made this pivot. By the way, that's why I'm asking.
in Georgia, it has been. I never want to see it again, at least for 3 years. Whether it's, and I know the fans loved it. The fans loved it when David Manders wrestled Nick Halen. I know Gary Lamb has gotten involved physically with some things. Hancock literally had a match for his company a couple of Christmases ago against Kitchens and Blackman in IWE. Has it been overdone? Yes, especially in Georgia. Like it's almost like a rule. If you're like the owner or the GM, you have to get involved and like let's try something else. Let's do something different.
Right. It's just always like the next progression of how do you know you're a big time company in Georgia is we got to do the fight for the company or the heel man. One of the two, right? It's either the battle for control of the company or it's the heel owner. One of the two. It's got to be one of the two. But typically it's the fight for the company, control of the company. And I've always asked why would you even put your control of your company up? I mean that doesn't make but whatever.
Yeah, so just one of those, one of those things. One of their big shows is their October show, um, Trick or Trauma. So I'm interested to see what they do there. I really it feels like a clean slate. Academia getting her first major title here in the South. If you didn't hear, we talked about it last week. Reka Tahaka had to relinquish the title due to NWA commitments. I mean, when you look at their list of champions, John Davis, Drew Hood's the Outbreak champion, Buff and Fluff, Eric. I mean, other than John Davis, man, they're going with the youth movement there.
I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's especially because it's not only that it's youth, it's different, which is always a plus. Maybe they're getting guys who are kind of like, this is somebody we can build and we can build on top, or kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm actually happy. I just like that. And I think we're going to have a conversation later about different across promotions. But, kudos to those guys.
Yeah, very good. Georgia Premier Wrestling was in Jasper. We don't have the results from that, but they had the first ever GPW Invitational Battle Royal. They had several title defenses. They will be back in Jasper on September 14th.
Real quick shout out, Josh Cantrell. I saw a post this morning. He had a pretty gnarly injury. Got butt busted open pretty good. So we want to give a shout out to him. I get it, guys. It's wrestling. It's not real. Well, those type of things, when you see those pictures, let you know. So we wanted to, quick shout out to Josh. He got banged up pretty good, and good to see. Check out Jasper. I'm trying to look at the dates, and man, maybe I keep trying to get back up there, and maybe the 14th. I'll have to check the calendar. Where I might not even be in town now that I think about that. But yeah, that's a good one to check out if you're up in that area.
Wrestle America presented Greeter Glory there in Forsyth, Georgia. They had a paid attendance of over 200. KJ Impala defeated Paul Wolf to retain that Liberty Championship. One match that caught my attention. You had the lovely Miss Larkin, who'd been really heavily involved in Georgia wrestling, has been gone, but in her first match back that I'm aware of, defeated the reigning female wrestler of the year in Rose Gold.
We always have said we need more talented women's wrestlers in Georgia. So I'm all for anybody, coming back, coming in, debuting, whatever, who can, step up and get into the mix and stuff, because that's always a plus for Georgia wrestling.
We need more quantity and more quality in the female division for sure. Mighty Joe Young and Duncan successfully defended their tag team titles. Chip Day won the Greed or Glory Rumble and donated his winnings to Sal Renaro. I think we talked about that last week, and good to see that GoFundMe exceeded their goal, and praying for Sal and his family to land on their feet moving forward. Fry Daddy, we talked about the match with Owen Knight. Owen Knight had an opportunity. He had to beat Fry Daddy, and if he did, he got an immediate title shot. Fry Daddy retaining the Wrestle America Heavyweight Championship. But I don't know that he's done with Owen Knight necessarily.
I don't know when Knight's done with him. Might be a better step. And, we teased this a little bit last week when we talked about, Owen Knight's run he's had at Classic City, some of the other places he's had some, about, I think in that pecking order, guys, we said if he grabbed this title, he definitely was vaulted into the mix that you could not kind of have that conversation. I think he's far from done. I think we're going to see more.
So as we were talking about the viral results, I'm looking. I noticed Owen Knight didn't have a match. He's at Wrestle America. He had a title shot at Wrestle America. And is that a development? Is that something we need to look into? Owen Knight has been, man, I would say maybe more than any other wrestler in Georgia, Owen Knight has been the heart and soul of our championship, of our pro wrestling. He has been there pretty much from day one. Long reigning Outbreak champion. He and Darius Lockhart had this tremendous best of 7 series. He was the heavy. Anyway, I'm not trying to stir up anything. I'm just saying I find that interesting that he was at one promotion and not his, what I'd say his home promotion. But there you go. Bullpen Pro Wrestling was there right across the border in Alabama Saturday night. 572 paid there at Ranburne High School. The wrestling coach went on Facebook, thanked everybody for their support. This was obviously a tremendous fundraiser for that school.
This is getting to become a number thing, right? And look, by the way, I want to clarify because I want to be consistent when we talked about numbers, right? It wasn't so much we're hung up on the actual quantity of the numbers. I always say it's a tool, not the tool. And what I mean by that is it's a tool to see your trends.
Yes.
The crazy thing is Bullpen's trend was like 450, 500, 570. They're like, you're trending in a heck of a direction. That's a plus.
Yes.
So it's not so much that we knock promotions that are doing 250. If you're consistent or your trend is good, that's a positive. I don't know that you can. There's no but positive way to spend 572, no matter how you try to do it.
Yeah, even if you tried to say, well, I mean, we saw pictures of this. Even if you said, well, I don't think they had any over 400. Okay, that 400 is pretty good, but there's no reason, I'm not saying we doubt this number. I'm just saying the trends are pretty good. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in a little bit. Sunday, this is one of the reasons we're doing this show on Tuesday now, because Monday there was a ton of news coming out about the Southern States Pro Show that happened on Sunday. Main event by Chip Day and TJP. But the big news was Southern States Pro is no more, and AWE, Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment, is back. They announced that. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, we've been around long enough here at the podcast that we were AWE was here. We enjoyed a lot of their shows. We did one of our favorite shows we went to was they did a show in Marietta at an event hall. It was like a double header with Evolve. Phenomenal show. It's here's the thing. It's a different presentation, and I think that's kind of the thing. Are they like is their goal at this point to be the alternative, a true alternative?
Right.
If everybody else is going to do family friendly, I know that's what Southern States was going to try to do, was bring in young talents from the region, and AWE's thing was like, hey, we're going to bring the best from all over. We're going to be mature. It is a mature product, 100%. Without a doubt, it is Murder, and it's got Murder One and Joe and Josh Wheeler's thumbprints all over it. It is a mature product. The time will tell us to see where does that go from there. But as I have said multiple times, when AWE is running and when they're doing well, that is a huge plus for Georgia wrestling. It always has been. So we hope that they're back at full force and they get some momentum and they're drawing and they're bringing in those talents, because we like Atlanta wrestling better when they're here. That's all I could, that's my take on it.
Yes. You just said the key word, and that is momentum. And it feels like it just in the last 3 or 4 years, they have not been able to get, for whatever reason. First they announced like some new rules, and they were going to do a season, and it was like a point system, and then they were, I didn't realize till this weekend that the Savage 16 had gotten canceled. And now, kind of rebranding. So again, we'll talk about this next is you got, in order to build momentum, you have to finish something. You have to finish something that you start. And that's where I'm interested in, is what's next for them. Can they just run consistently, draw consistent, just be consistent, and then maybe do something big, something major. They're going to be back September 14th. There's a free show as part of Charlie's Collectible Show, Stone Mountain, Georgia. The Godfather is going to be there, so you can check them out. September 14th, a pretty full day on the wrestling slate that weekend. So let's talk about this. A couple of topics we want to talk about. And first of all, I don't think we have a name for this segment yet. This is just kind of like the overreaction Monday, I guess. This weekend, 3 shows: Viral, Southern Honor, Bullpen. 3 shows over 500. When was the last time that happened in Georgia? Has that ever happened in Georgia?
I'm sure somebody will pull the history books back and let us know that it's happened at some point, but not since we've been, doing our thing. I don't remember anything being like, I remembered vaguely there was a 400 stretch, like 3 promotions putting over 400 or 5, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it was at a time, by the way, when we were all kind of like, maybe not,
Right. Well, in all 3 of these promotions, Viral would be the oldest, and they're only 7 or 8 years old. Southern Honor's been around, 7 years, 6, 7 years. Bullpen's been around 6 months. So this is not like the old standards that are doing this. This is new promotion, or fairly new promotions coming in. But that's a good sign for Georgia. I think Georgia is benefiting from the resurgence of the live, the live event industry is doing really well. What I would say is, if you are a Georgia promotion, we are seeing various promotions, various towns drawing 500-600 people. And so if you are still struggling to draw 40 or 50, you've got to reassess some things and figure out how to tap into this energy and this vibe that's here to draw a better crowd.
And it's, by the way, it's a weird dynamic of the ones that ran. It was different scenarios for each. I understand that Rumblejack's a big event for for Georgia. Infection is a big event for Viral, but Viral was at a different place. I mean, like we didn't like look. We preface with kudos and great job. Did I think they were going to draw 600? On all honesty, probably not. Like if you'd asked me to give me a number, 400 to 500, somewhere in that range. And I mean, I think I'm not offending anybody by that comment.
Right.
Southern Honor been gone for, they had taken a month off and they run their big event, so they nail it. But then Bullpen being just new, they're still and this is not disrespecting, but they're a shiny new toy in the toy box. So they're over there drawing. It's again, so you got every different type of scenario for all three of them. I think we still come back to, no disrespect to all of them, Southern Honor's got a show next month. Viral's going to be back for their Halloween show. Bullpen's going to be back. They're going to do another show as well. They've got to keep their momentum of being new because, look, people said it about Southern Honor when they were new. They won't be here. They won't last. It's temporary. Okay, well, Bullpen's got to prove them wrong. Gary Lamb and Southern Honor got to keep that momentum going from a Rumblejack. Same goes for Viral. But the question is is everybody going to be so busy trying to make the excuse of why they drew versus looking at themselves in the mirror and going, okay, what can we do to tap into that as well, like you said?
Yeah, I think what is so fascinating, so good, and you just touched on this a little bit, these three shows drew for different reasons. One was the event. It was that match. One was you had Joe Henry. You had one of the hottest acts in the country. Bullpen was a fundraiser to high school. So we're showing there's not necessarily one way to do this. There's multiple ways to have success in Georgia. And I think there's multiple definitions of success. It was one thing I just thought about is there are guys who wrestled at Bullpen Saturday night. They wrestled in front of more people in one night than they wrestle in front of in a month or two at their normal promotions. Yeah. So that's a good experience for them to I remember we brought in a guy, a referee, and we probably had about 100 to 120, and he comes out through the curtain and he almost has a panic attack because he'd never reffed in front of that many people. And we're like, this isn't even one of our big crowds, but that to him was like, oh, what? And we, somebody kind of had to talk him off the ledge there to get him settled down.
So now I'm going to throw another one at you, Heath. Here's another crazy question. I don't even know if I'm out of order at this point. 2 of those 3 promotions, again, no disrespect, they can figure out who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of the year, 2 of those 3 weren't even the ones that you'd be talking about are the best promotions in Georgia, right? And again,
right.
So there's new players involved. Like it's, what does that say? Like there are a lot of, and you can insert your own names. Are there promotions that are are they, I don't want to say lost in the shuffle, but are they lost in the shuffle? Did they think that we could do what we're doing and we're going to be okay? And the next thing you know, you turned around and you looked and you're like, wait, where did these guys come from? Because there's a lot of new promotions that have busted on the scene that we're talking about, like what they bring to the table that other promotions don't offer.
Bullpen Pro Wrestling is not drawing fans that were going to other Georgia wrestling shows. Bullpen, and I don't know that they've had a show under 200 people. They are drawing brand new independent wrestling fans.
Heath, they haven't had a show under 400.
Yeah, they're doing something.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the area, but I think many of the promotions in Georgia, number one, they've not created new fans for their product, or they've not tapped into. I continue to see people who love WWE and AEW. Listen, I have friends that watch WWE that have never even heard of AEW. They watch WWE. They watch everything on WWE. They watch every show. They don't know about AEW, and they don't know about independent wrestling. I'm amazed at how many people don't know about independent wrestling. So I think it was Gary Lamb that said, when you've heard it, when you're tired of hearing your stuff, there's somebody that hasn't heard about it the first time. So I think there's room for improvement across the board with a lot of promotions, and now the time is ripe. The time is ripe, and I don't think there's any excuses.
If in a time when everything seems to be getting hot and moving forward, if you look back at your trend and your crowds have even slightly decreased, you need to reassess.
Yes. You had Disruptor drew 250 plus with the premium ticket price. They weren't doing $5, $10 tickets.
I tell people all the time, I think the day has come when, look, wrestling fans won't like that stance. I agree. Tickets need to be higher. Front rows need to be 20. General admission can be 10 or 15 if you want them to be or whatever, or even bump them up even more, because I think we've argued about it. Think about it. We've made that argument about concession stands. Like, your concession stand prices are too low. And they're like, no. I'm like, no, they just are.
Yeah.
But you got to make the money. If the fans want talents to be paid, that's got to be your trade-off. Is you got to understand it is and I don't care if you get creative. It's front rows $20 a ticket or 4 for $70 or something like that or whatever. Get creative. But you got to get, it's time, I think, for the ticket pricing to kind of slowly bump, in my opinion.
Yes. So you and I, last week, were invited to be a part of this quarter's power rankings of wrestlers. I want to talk a little bit about those rankings, but this was one of the, let me say first, thanks for the opportunity to be a part of this. Very educational. I really want to talk about what doing this made us realize. So I am a nerd. And one of the things when we started this podcast, I tried to do a spreadsheet to keep track of all the results of the various shows. I think I made it like through 3 weeks. It was just impossible. It was so much. So when I started working on this list, I made a spreadsheet of promotions, and I made a list of wrestlers, and I was given points. Okay, if you had the main title, you got this many points. If you wrestled, I was shocked that there was a lot of perceptions that I had about Georgia wrestling that factually were wrong. And one of those is there are not as many guys headlining multiple promotions as we think. It's not the same wrestlers everywhere.
No. I mean, because I think what happened is it was easier to have that concept and that belief. By the way, there's a lot of beliefs in general that we have discovered that are this way. But what we thought was when there were less promotions, then it makes more sense because it's just simple. The more promotions there are, the more promotions that are running the same night, then that can't happen.
Yes.
And it may be, look, you could make the argument the percentage, is smaller because there's more promotions. But even then, that still makes your point true. That a lot of people thought like, oh, well, this guy, he's everywhere. there are guys who work multiple promotions, yes, but that doesn't mean they're the main event guy everywhere, or they're the top champion, or etc. But what does is when it happens, I think it does mean more now because we find out that is not as rampant as we so believe.
I do believe, I want to be very careful how I say this. We often talk about independent wrestling as AA, AAA, single A, church softball. I do think in those lower levels, there is a lot of crossover.
Correct.
In some of those shows. I think what I mean is for Southern Honor and IWE and Viral and some of these others, there's not as much crossover as there used to be. Another thing I realized, and I wanted to say this right because I don't want to criticize the wrestler. White Mike was number 22 on this list. Now he's been the IWE champion. He won that title at their first show of the year. White Mike has only wrestled 4 times in Georgia this year. 3 of those in IWE. I can't remember where the other one was.
Southern States.
Southern States. Now, I don't think he's lost a match, but what does that say when we're just talking about guys not working multiple promotions? But if you can be in the top 25 and wrestle, I mean, these rankings were for January through June. I think that was another thing that surprised me is how many guys have wrestled 10 to 15 times in Georgia this year?
I think, yes. It's funny because, we joked about like how many guys don't wrestle as much as you think.
Yes.
And by the way, because I can completely explain it where there should be no offense taken by White Mike. And the reason I say that is Cruel's not on this list.
Yes.
Okay, that doesn't, like, Joe Hendry's not on this list.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what I mean? It's like they just don't, if you don't wrestle enough to qualify or whatever, that doesn't matter. That's a different argument, right? And if the criteria is how often you wrestle in multiple places, okay, then that's going to hold you back. That doesn't mean, because I think a lot of the clarity was, is it the best wrestler in Georgia, or is it, this was a power ranking list, not a best wrestler list.
Right.
So let's not go crazy on how we use it. And I think ultimately that sometimes, I think wording matters, which was why we were very specific about when we did our Power 5 or Hot Handed. Like, dude, we never said these people were the best wrestlers or the best owners or the best promotion. We just said who's hot right now, who's in the power position right now, etc. And I think that's what this list was supposed to be. And that sometimes is where, just like any award, sometimes things go a little sideways. When the human element gets involved, things go a little sideways and may not exactly end up where they don't mean what you think they mean.
Right. One thing that this list and lists like this showed is perhaps there's not as much harmony between the locker rooms as we've been led to believe, that perhaps there's still a little, I mean, you call it jealousy, ego, pride, whatever, but there's still some dislike, heat, questioning between talents.
Well, look, I think this kind of ties into, I don't know if I'm going to steal your thunder here. I'm going to backpedal to one of your other ones, your number 3 on your notes, is like what these really mean, what lists are and what they mean. Mm-hmm. For one, and I'll tell you how I'm going to tie them together here in a second. These are just like our thoughts, opinions, or whoever's Georgia Wrestling History or the Tapped Out Podcast Networks or whoever's. Mm-hmm. If you're really getting your feelings hurt by a bunch of guys' opinions, it's a little much, guys. Right. I mean, because I preface always and say, it's just my opinion. I'm not telling you this is a fact. Right. This is what it is. Now, the reason I brought that up is because guys are arguing about other talents' placements on the list. And I'm like, well, first of all, it doesn't say they're the best wrestler. I think that's why I wanted to adamantly point that out there. Because if I had been asked who's the best wrestler in Georgia, I'm not saying it is or it isn't. This isn't my. The totality of the list isn't my list, nor was it the list that I put in.
Yes.
Does that mean? I mean, so it's a different list. If you're giving criteria and the criteria is followed, well, immediately once criteria is involved, then you're skewing it in what direction. By the way, it's not an insult to the people that create, because I admired the way they put it out there.
Yes.
The second there's criteria, you're criteriaing it to a direction that you want it to go.
Yes.
Which is why we get to do our Power 5, and we completely tell you our criteria. It's our thoughts and opinions. We completely make it up.
Yes. I think the way that Georgia Wrestling History did this list, the number of people they got, the way they did kind of the scoring or whatever, I think it was very fair. It was very thought provoking. I am very grateful that to have the opportunity. It made me think about a lot of things. I think we're also seeing, and I think this is a good thing, Georgia Wrestling History and podcasts like us, we are thermometers instead of thermostats. Here's what I mean by that. We're just measuring the temperature. We're not dictating anything. We're not there's not like any hidden control. Nobody's like, there's no man behind the curtain anymore. We're just here to report. And I think, GWH is doing a great job. Lots of reports, lots of things like that. Promotions sending in. I think that's good. We're just sitting here and listen, right now the temperature is very hot. Right now, Georgia wrestling is thriving in so many different ways, which is great for us because we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, tons of shows every single week, week in, week out. But like, I think more people don't concern yourself. Go make money.
Yes.
Don't worry about where you fall on the list. Go make money. I don't care how many shows you're booked on. Go make money. If I don't care about who you're beating or who you're losing to, go make money. Like at the end of the day, it always comes down to that, in my opinion, when it comes to the wrestling business, or it should be anyway.
To our knowledge, there is not a pecking order anymore. It doesn't appear to be. There's no promotion that's pulling the strings and controlling things. There's not some conspiracy holding anybody down. Everybody, people are being successful. I think the main thing, talking about making money, and we talked about this before we hit record, is there has been too much over promising and under delivering. You see promotions, we talked about it, where they book an angle before they even know if the guy could be there for their next couple of shows. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. This is easy stuff. This is like elementary stuff. Like, hey, can you be at our next 2 shows? We're going to book this angle. Boom, boom, boom. It's going to end here. Yep, I can be there. Now, listen, if that wrestler backs out on you, if they get hurt, you can't control that. You can control, hello, are you available for these shows? Right. Can you be here? We're not going to book this if you can't be here. It's as simple as that. I also feel like wrestling's supposed to be fun. Wrestling at its best is simple. I hate you, you hate me, let's fight about it. Hey, you want this title? I got this title, let's fight about it. Let's see who the best is. Hey, you talked about my mama, I'm going to kick your butt or whatever. It is at its simplest. And I think sometimes we make it a little too complicated. And if guys like me and Nick can't follow what you're doing, if we can't find when your next show is, you probably need to reassess and up your game a little bit. There's been times we've gone to do the show and we're like, did they run? What happened? Did they have any? We don't know because we can't find it anywhere.
Just something. Just anything. But yeah, and I'm with you, man. Like I said, it's just the at the core, there's some basic storytelling. Do those stories, do them well, think them through, give me a beginning, middle, and an end, and usually you're okay. And, the days, by the way, I'm trying to say this. You talked about the pecking order and why there's not one anymore. And it's something that I gave some props, some kudos to, just a week or two ago. It's because guys like Zach Mosley and, down in the Coastal Empire, Kraken down at Tifton, there's new blood coming in on what that's one aspect to the mix that's changing it up because the boys are running it essentially. Mm-hmm. And so that's not coming from it's coming from a completely different viewpoint. But then you got promotions like, look, I think Turnbuckle and Bullpen don't care. Like, we're going to do our show, and we're not part of that. And we're just going to do our thing. Right. So be it.
Right.
So they're not into that system. And I think also I'm hoping more guys are learning you have to work. It's one of the things, again, I talk about Disruptor. What I like about them is they bring in talents that other people aren't bringing in. I wanted to see, I want to see guys work, guys they're not always wrestling. Mm-hmm. There's certain two guys I've seen so many times that they're like, oh, they're going to have a good match. And I'm like, they should. If they have a bad match, I'm more disappointed than if they had a good match.
Right.
Because, you've got to get out there if you're trying to go anywhere and expand a little bit. And I think that's what some of these other promotions are forcing, I hope, everybody to do. You got to get better because you guys that think that you are the best of the best, you're getting past.
That is 100%. I will make this prediction. I think these are two easy predictions, so I'm not going to be a prophet or anything. I think we're going to see a promotion close before the end of the year that we didn't see coming, and I think we're going to see one or two more promotions launch as we get toward the end of the year, and then we'll see if they have any longevity. But I just got a gut feeling we're going to see somebody major just cease to run this year. Yeah. I don't know who it is. I don't have any inside information. It's just a gut feeling. Another gut feeling I have, fans, is that you need to subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/tappedOutPod. I will be I did not send it to Nick. I did record a Heath's hot takes after the Rumblejack. I think it's all stuff that you did not hear on this show. Nothing too controversial this time around, but you can check that out if you're a member. You can also become a member there at YouTube, Tapped Out Pod. You got to hit the subscribe button, go through the videos, hit the like button, hit the notifications you get. You find out when everything is dropped. And then also audio, we're there for you. We are having a blast. I'm excited about the new format. And you want to check out Nick and Myron this week on the Tapped Out Wrestling podcast. What can we expect from you and Myron this week?
Look, man, we touched on Mercedes Mone a little bit. I'm sure there'll be some more conversation about that. Warner Brothers woke up one morning and decided they were $9 billion less valuable than they thought they were. That'll be on the conversation. The Roman Reigns returns on Smackdown. I mean, look, there's so much stuff to go over. A multi-time WWE, at this point he's a legend and a Hall of Famer for sure. Re-signed, got a new deal, so stuff like that. I'm sure we'll go down that rabbit hole as well. But then look, we're going to promote push, kind of go over all of the new the shows that are running this next weekend here locally in Georgia. So that's going to be new to the show. So hopefully a lot of people like the little mixing it up a little bit, and we'll kind of go from there, man.
So fans, if you're looking for the coverage of Georgia and beyond, it's the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. We're so grateful for your support. We're so grateful for all of our members and friends, and we hope very soon to see you at the matches. For Nick, this is Heath, and we'll see you soon.